no way out through the door, but Mr. T opens a window and with great effort manages to push away an enormous boulder. Miss Bisbee looks on in admiration.
Goodness, that looks quite heavy.
It's not a marshmallow, Bisbee.
They escape from the bus through the hole made by Mr. T. Robin shakes her head.
I guess we didn't fool anybody. They must know we're onto them.
Mr. T says that he will check the place where Miss Bisbee crashed into the Silver Swan. There should be an oil trail which Woody and Robin decide to follow. Jeff and Kim say that they will call on the owner of the museum and tell him what has happened. Robin wants to do that too.
Why don't you guys wait until I can go with you? You might miss something.
Jeff is a little annoyed. What you're really saying is you don't want us to come up with something without you. Mr. T interrupts the argument.
Settle it on the way back to the hotel. We got a long walk ahead.
The next day, Jeff and Kim call on Mr. Kingston, the owner of the museum. He is one of the richest men in the world and lives in a chalet set in large overgrown grounds surrounded by a strong fence. There is an intercom system at the main gate, and the two gymnasts use it to talk to the butler. But he says Mr. Kingston is not at home. However, Jeff sees the millionaire in the distance coming out of his chalet. They leap over the fence with the help of an overhanging branch and run off to try to meet him. But they are caught in snare traps as they run through the bushes and find themselves suspended upside down as two sleek cougars charge across the grounds towards them. Jeff thinks they've hung around long enough. I didn't grow up to be cat food! They pull themselves up the ropes and release themselves, as Mr. Kingston calls on the cougars to stop.
Rover! Spot! Sit!
With the cats under control, Kingston listens to what Kim and Jeff have to say about the Silver Swan. In the meantime, Robin and Woody and Mr. T have followed a trail of oil from the place where Miss Bisbee crashed the car to an old sawmill. They find the mill converted into a garage full of auto parts suitable for antique cars. Woody turns to Mr. T.
I suspect the Silver Swan isn't the only fake at Kingston's museum. Someone is building doubles of his classic cars right here.
Mr. T agrees.
And then selling the originals.
Robin notices a calendar advertising Fast Eddie's used cars, just like the one at the museum.
I think we've got ourselves a clue.
They are standing on plank decking which juts out over the river, and a shadowy figure swings a sledgehammer at the deck supports. The decking collapses, and Robin, Woody, and Dozer fall into the raging river below. For a moment, Mr. T manages to hang onto a broken piece of timber, but then that breaks under his weight, and he too falls into the torrent and is swept away after the young gymnasts and their dog. Robin and Woody grab hold of a rock and hang on for dear life as Mr. T swims to the shore and pulls a tree out of the ground. He holds it out over the river, and Robin and Woody grab it and are pulled to safety. Woody is very grateful.
Thanks, Mr. T.
You can thank me later. What happened to the dog?
They hear a bark, and Dozer emerges, dripping wet from bushes near the river. He shakes himself and sprays water all over Mr. T.
You're a lucky dog. I'm glad to see you.
The team meet up at a hamburger stand. Jeff has been doing some research on Kingston and found that he is not doing so well financially. Kim explains what that means.
Kingston must have stolen the Silver Swan himself. He'll sell it and use the unreported income to pay off his debts.
At that moment, the fake Silver Swan drives past them and they all jump to their feet and chase after it. The museum guard is at the wheel. Mr. T jumps onto the running board and forces the driver to stop. The guard explains that all the cars in the museum are in working order and are driven regularly to keep them so. They let him drive on and then notice a used car lot across the street. Fast Eddie's used cars. Robin understands what goes on.
They must drive the real car in one garage and the fake car out of the other.
Mr. T nods.
That way they lose no time getting back to the museum. Not a bad plan.
Mr. T pretends to be a wealthy collector on the lookout for antique cars, and he calls on Fast Eddie. Eddie tells him to come back that night. He does so, wearing a concealed radio so that the rest of the team can record everything that goes on. When Mr. T goes back to Eddie's that night, he is jumped on by Watson and handcuffed by Fast Eddie. He allows them to bundle him into a car. Watson laughs. We're going for a little ride. The boss wants to talk to you. You're not so tough, you know. The team hear all this over the radio and prepare to follow in another car, which Robin insisted on arranging. But the car is out of gas. Jeff is disgusted. You had to do it all, didn't you? Now you've blown it. We're gonna lose Mr. T. Luckily, over the radio, they hear the crooks tell Mr. T they are taking him to an island in the lake to meet the boss, Kingston. Using snorkels, the 4 gymnasts swim across to the island underwater and unobserved. Woody somersaults through the window of the tea house where the crooks are holding Mr. T.
The party's over, Watson.
What's going on? Mr. T pulls against the handcuffs and snaps them apart.
My team's arrived.
A great fight develops with the gymnasts using backflips and somersaults to confuse the crooks. Kingston tries to get away in his boat, but Mr. T follows after him in another. Using a rock in the water as a ramp, he makes his boat leap high in the air over Kingston's and splashes down in front of him.
Your boat ride is over, Kingston.
The crooks are rounded up and handed over to the police. Robin is apologetic.
Boy, did I learn my lesson. No more hogging the show.
Mr. T smiles.
That what makes you a good leader, Robin. You learn from your mistakes.